I'm Di Smith, Chair of Arts Council Wales, and I'm not going to tiptoe around at all, so I'm going to do headlines, and then hopefully if I've got my 6 minutes, I'll do a coda at the end. I want to begin, if I may, by talking about anthropology, the study of social exotic others. So I want you to imagine, if you will, a country of around 3 million people, in which 750,000 people, a quarter of the entire population of that country, live in one extended conurbation, which is more populous than that country's two largest cities put together. A conurbation in which from 80 to 95% of the people are native-born, that is more than first, second generation. A true heartland, in other words, one which formed the politics, the society, and the culture of that country's last century like nothing else and like nowhere else in that country. So much so that in the eyes of outsiders, that part became the whole to the continued distress of those who would shun the reality of that country. Shun it, shunning that populous, huge sector, shunning it by demonizing the population, by caricaturing them, by despising them, by arguing quite seriously for decanting them in swathes from the communities they have made so that they can live forcibly together near the only work apparently feasible for them in the city, not in the so-called region. Imagine how strange that country would be. Open your eyes and think of Wales. They'll be singing in the streets of the valleys tonight, not in Bethesda, not in Cowbridge, and certainly not in Cardiff. The truism that becomes, the cliche that becomes the truism. But the great and the good of our country would like it if that song had been strangled at birth and certainly should not continue to be sung. The importance of the valleys in their dynamism and now in their doldrums isn't to be gainsaid in our history, and nor, I think, is the cultural silence that wraps those valleys today in a shroud of Welsh indifference. Or is it fear? The valleys are the working class elephant in the bourgeois front room of Welsh culture. In their economic heyday, they dominated, distorted, if you like, all of Welsh life. In their stubborn refusal to give up, to go away, to die, they remain, albeit muted, the Frankenstein of Wales. I say muted, but I suppose I really mean silenced. Earlier this year, the Director General of the BBC, Tony Hall, came to Cardiff and said that not enough drama, documentaries, entertainment, and so on was seen on the screens in Wales that expressed the English language, largely valleys culture of Wales. Imagine the silencing of 750,000 people. We've been asked to be specific, so I will be in a series of rushed stories or headlines. If you stand on the railway platform to go to the valleys on Cardiff, you will hear the announcements made, Train Nesaf, etc., and then an impeccable estuarine English voice. Most of the people catching those trains are being told where they're going in two languages, neither of which they largely speak or understand. In the 1990s, declaration of interest, when I was head of programmes at BBC Wales, we had the first ever soap on Radio Wales in English, first ever, Station Road. We had the first ever situation comedy in English, Satellite City. We had the first ever drama soap, Belonging. And we had a raft of documentaries and arts programmes such as we'd never had before in English. £19 million of programming was spent on English language programming in Wales. When I began, it had been 13 million. Now, after news and sport are ring-fenced by BBC Wales, they spend only £5 million on other programming. If we look at our schools, if you go to a Welsh language schools in Wales, quite rightly, you will read Welsh language poetry or prose. You have to. You should do. If you go to the other schools of Wales, you will find that you do not have to, in any part of the curriculum, have to have any sense of your identity or the articulation of your identity in novels or drama or poetry. The identity of that population is being called into question, and we are in danger of following the holy grail of bilingualism at its expense. Wales today is all too often bypassing the contemporary reality that was derived from that overwhelming past. Kay Andrews from Tredegar, Baroness Kay Andrews, stressed in her recent report, Culture and Poverty, that the latter, poverty, must be combated by the aspirations of the former culture, and that we must be more effectively targeting that conurbation. If we are to solve all of their other economic and social problems, then culture is a vehicle that allows us to answer the question for Wales. And the question is, What is the purpose of Wales? What is its vision beyond geography and a formal existence? Our civic culture in Wales, press and politics included, is currently weak. More intent we are on constitutionalism than on citizenship. We are more blinded by institutionalism than we are enlightened by our historical experience. And therefore we are unwilling to accept the vital need for critical thought that might dispel the nirvana of a forced unity and a bland consensus. And in turn, we are not sustaining the articulation through art of that Welsh identity held intact by that majoritarian population of which I speak, and the continued vitality of the social values that validate and would allow us to see a different and distinctive Wales. And I hope I've got time for my brief coda, which is, some of you will know that in my dementia, I've turned to writing fiction. Some people think I've been doing it all my life. This is a short story I've been writing called Counteractual, and it kicks off with Cassidy, a TV reporter. He's just made another anthropological film about the valleys, and he's leaving as his TV crew pack up, and I'll just read the beginning. The old man watched Cassidy retreat down the street. He saw pigeons slide off the low, cream-coloured concrete windowsill of a garishly painted terraced house. Bubblegum pink for the walls and baby blue for the woodwork. He saw Pigeon flip a half-smoked cigarette in Cassidy's direction and wave him away with a vigorously waggled V sign and a muttered, "Piss off out of here." He waited for Pigeon to turn on his heel to walk towards him. The old man looked past Pigeon to check that Cassidy had reached his car. He had. He had paid Pigeon no attention. The car with the TV presenter at the wheel moved off in a hurry. The old man walked slowly towards Pigeon. When they stood face to face on the pavement in the middle of the street, Pigeon looked down at the old man, ready for him to speak first. In the silence between them, Pigeon was impatient. He shouted, loud enough for an audience, "What's that about, Butt? He's off a telly, ain't he? A tosser there, he can fuck off for a start. All right, Butt?" The old man tilted his creased and pallid face up towards Pigeon so closely that his stubble almost scratched the teenager's scrawny throat. "Yes, he is," the old man said. "And there's no real requirement for you to speak like that now that he's gone and they've finished filming. And they are out of hearing so long as you desist from shouting." "Sorry," said Pigeon. "It's just that I thought you'd said we had to keep it up under all circumstances." "Yes, by all and every means, but only when it's necessary for them, not between ourselves, eh?" Pigeon took off his back-to-front baseball cap. He looked up the street where the TV crew were packing up their gear. "Are they really that thick?" he asked. The old man sighed. "No, not thick exactly, just a trifle obtuse where other people are concerned. They can't read our signals so readily. We don't go around with coal black faces anymore. Our politics no longer frightens them. We are no visible threat to their own conception of society, though that, of course, we hope may change one day again. You see, we are in their eyes poor, so we must be lesser. We stay here by choice, so we cannot be, oh sacred word, aspirational. You can see why, then, it would not be helpful in the firmament of their fixed universe if we were to be discovered enjoying Beethoven, discussing Matisse's cutouts, or reading Lessing or Updike and Mailer, or indeed, as you do yourself, Pigeon, be found grappling with Foucaultism as a metaphor for our auto-incarceration. We speak as we do before them, only for them. It is necessary to sustain their illusion by deluding them. Okay?